This cover slide here is actually this picture was taken just the other day from a site that we worked on the Lordsburg Playa. This is at milepost 10 on Interstate Highway 10 on your way to Arizona. If you look to the south, you'll see this little section of land that suddenly looks like a waffle and has wood mulch all over it. And the other day it rained and the whole thing went underwater. And I used this picture to demonstrate water harvesting for land restoration because this is a novel approach that Van and Gordon Tooley and I sort of developed for this location on the playa, which is a completely flat, smooth as glass, tabletop surface, hard pan, playa bottom. And every time it would rain on this particular little section of the playa with zero vegetation and almost zero slope, but having a glass-like smooth surface, water just very quickly went downhill. Even though there was less than a foot of topography for like hundreds of feet, the water wouldn't stay on the land. It just moves downhill. And so what we did is we used a bulldozer to change the topography of the landscape and basically create fractals of rainwater harvesting basins where we had on 50-foot centers. So almost as big as this room, water harvesting basins, almost as big as this room that were built with a cat bulldozer and very smooth undulating to create a very smooth undulating surface. A really variable undulating surface across the 30 plus acres on this land. And then we rolled that with the land imprinter, which created these smaller basins on 12-inch centers. And so every square foot of land is holding water where it lands, and every 50 feet of land is holding water where it lands as well. And so this is kind of at one end of the site, which would normally be dry after a rain, and we can see that it's been wet and it's been inundated. And so the idea is that somewhere along the edge of this flooded zone, grass is going to start growing. We're going to start seeing lines of grass along the bathtub rings. The other thing that was cool about this, as you can see in the background, is there's islands now. Whereas maybe this whole site would go underwater, now we actually have islands that would pop up. And so I thought that was appropriate. There's no grass on our work there yet, but this was just installed in May of this year. So we have some exciting stuff to see. The problem is that land degradation caused by overgrazing and conventional monocrop agriculture, transportation, energy development, all these things have drastically changed the way water moves across the landscape. If you combine this with altering of the perennial rivers and ephemeral streams, such as dams and dirt tanks, channelized rivers like our Rio Grande, all of these things has drastically changed the way water moves across the landscape. And what we're doing with our watersheds as a result is we're getting rid of water as fast as we can. The Rio Grande is no longer a river. It is an irrigation water delivery system south of Elephant Butte Dam. And I learned that, like, the way that was phrased to me was actually by one of the senior management guys at the BLM years ago. He said, we can't necessarily think of the Rio Grande as a river. It's an irrigation delivery pipeline. And that's by design. And as a result, the water is leaving our watershed super quickly. And as a result, we're drying out. And so all of these things that we're talking about yesterday and today are designed and meant to keep water in the watershed. And we do that best by starting at the top of the watershed, as high in the watershed as possible when we can. And so if we can keep that water high in the watershed, it will benefit everything lower in the watershed over time. Yes, Pete?
I also want to point out, by channelizing the river, what's happened too is we've lost a lot of the water cycle where we get these overflows to the river we used to have, and creates more water throughout the year and has that water cycle continuing. Now we just, like you said, it just dries out and we don't get that water cycle. So that's why we've got so many droughts, because the river is so stifled and it's not allowed to meander, or it's not allowed to overflow anymore and create these pockets that are wet throughout the year. So we lose that water cycle, transpiration, and it escalates, it gets worse.
I work at Keystone Heritage Park in El Paso, one of two wetlands, where the Rio Grande Valley used to be all wetlands, This is just a quick diagram that sort of shows where different parts of erosion happen in different areas of the landscape. And so in the uplands, where it's maybe a little bit more level and a little bit more vegetated, and as you get away from that area, you start getting the splashing from the rain, and that's pretty minor. But and all of that's protected by vegetation, but as you get away from vegetation, as vegetation starts disappearing, that splashing then turns into sheet flow. And the sheet flow takes away the topsoil. And as the slope of the landscape gets a little bit steeper, we start running into rills, and then those rills join and become gullies, and then they become big giant arroyos. Connie Maxwell had some really nice pictures in her presentation yesterday of giant erosive gullies, just carved into dirt as a result of changing elevations downstream, causing head cutting, eating up into the landscape. Our work aims to reduce the formation of rills and gullies kind of in this area of the landscape by changing the way the water moves through that landscape. This is an aerial view of kind of this part of the landscape on a site that, again, this is the Lordsburg Playa site. There's a whole lot going in on this photograph, and I'm not going to go into the whole thing because that's not what this particular project is about. But you can see this cauliflower type erosion happening where it's moving that sediment downstream and onto the playa. That's a big source of dust for those dust storms. There's Van showing the rate of erosion that happens. So when that mesquite tree germinated, who knows how long ago, it was at the land surface where the land surface was where Van's hand is. And so everything below Van's hand there is roots, and everything above is dead. But you can see how that ties into the land surface behind it. You see in the background there? And so look at all of that erosion that's happened. And this is just a small example. Today we're going to go out to Butler Cawthorn. So yesterday we talked about a lot of urban green infrastructure stuff. Today we're talking a little bit more about restoration stuff. We're going to go out to the Butler Cawthorn site, which is on the West Mesa where the Roadrunner is. And this is where, this is higher in the watershed. And so this is where landscape scale restoration work is working to keep water higher in the watershed. So that red area there, we're going to zoom in on that, and we're going to rotate off of north just a little bit. But this is the Cawthorn Dam. This is just a utility access road. This is a Cawthorn Dam. And John Gwynn from the Doña Ana Flood Commission has a whole bunch of these spread all over Doña Ana County that are filling up with sediment as a result of erosion happening too fast. And he needs a place to put that sediment in. It's causing a lot of maintenance troubles, right? So what's going on here on the West Mesa escarpment is no doubt geologic. I mean, there's erosion happening there that's geologic. That's what's formed the Rio Grande Valley and stuff. But as a result of the lack of vegetation, continuing off-road use, unauthorized off-road use of ATVs and trucks and things, that erosion and the sediment flow coming from it is exacerbated. So we're trying to figure out, where do we put restoration features in the landscape? Well, Connie's crew at NMSU is working up some really cool computer-based models to try to figure out what we do is we walk around the landscape and we go, oh, look, we should put something there. And we should put something there. Connie's looking at things at a watershed scale and throwing dots on the map for us to go look at. And this particular map is what's called a topographic wetness index. And if I try to describe exactly the mathematical formulas that go into creating this map, I'll get it wrong. But what we see is that the blue areas are where water is pretty much flowing. The redder areas, the more red it is, the more high and dry it is. Somewhere in the middle there is a place where we can put hand-built and small erosion control features. And in this particular color imagery, it happens to be where the white starts turning into orange. And we can put in these little one-rock dams and other features. And I forget the black, I forget what the different colors mean, but the dots on the map mean erosion control features. So we're going to go out here today and we're going to look at some of the work that we did, particularly in this area. So the rest of this slideshow kind of quickly talks about our strategies for doing this stuff. We approach the problem with watershed restoration solutions, and we try to change the way water moves across the landscape in order to slow, spread, and sink the water so that it will grow vegetation. If vegetation is on the landscape, it'll help stabilize the soil and reduce erosion. We talked about all the reasons for that yesterday. So a lot of what we do is we build hand-built rock structures, CCC style stuff, you know. We build a lot of them. Lots and lots of them. Oh, I actually removed some of the slides. I have like 10 slides just like this that just show picture after picture after picture of all the ones that I can do. Though you could call these all kinds of different structures. These are cross veins, Zuni bowls. Depending on the nuance of the shape of it, you can call it a J-hook cross vein, one rock dam. We're not. Connie told me one day, don't call them check dams. We're trying to get away from calling them check dams. Okay, so I'm going to call them check dams. Anyway, the whole idea is to change the energy of the water and the sediment transport mode at that point. And what we do is we figure out a system and we build a whole bunch of these together so that they work together. And they're pretty easy to build. Some of these rocks are as big as, you can carry one rock in a wheelbarrow. But then after that, a lot of these are basketball-sized rocks, if you will. And here's kind of an approach of how we go about figuring this out. This is actually Placitas Arroyo outside of Hatch. This is kind of in the uplands part. And this is an erosional feature, just a little rill that has the opportunity to be fixed by a structure like this. And so what we do is we mapped it out, and we've got our measuring tape in there, and all of these blue flags represent where we would put a one rock dam. And then, so we just kind of a textbook page, if you will, mapped out what the elevation of the desired structure is, and we were able to calculate a potential area of effect. And so in these 4 tiny little sites, you can also see the scale. There's a couple of human beings and my dog in that picture in the upper right hand corner here. And so you can see the scale of that. We've got 4 features that can be built in there, probably by lunchtime. Maybe by, depends on how close the rock is. And we can calculate how much sediment is going to be captured and how much area will be wetted by slowing the water down there. And these are just kind of conservative estimates. So on the first one, you got 10 cubic feet. Down here, you got 34 cubic feet. And for these 4 structures, we calculated 81 cubic feet, which isn't a whole heck of a lot, but you figure a couple of college kids can do this in a day. And we start repeating this hundreds of times throughout a landscape, and we start actually really changing the way sediment is accumulated in the landscape. The total area of effect is 121 square feet. More water sinking into the soil to grow grass and vegetation. Each one of these little one rock dams will accumulate sediment and seed. And because that seed gets wet and everything, the idea is that grass will start growing in that. This is a freshly built cross vein inside of a deeply incised arroyo. You can see Matthew's knee deep inside of this arroyo. And the idea is that the sediment will build up and basically fill this arroyo in over time. There's another one. Oh, here's that series of slides. There it is. There. There's the wheelbarrow. And Matthew's a big dude. So it gives you a little bit of scale. I like this picture because this shows the day of construction. There's this little, you can see that rock right there. That's on the day of construction. And then a year later, there's that same rock. And because the water is slowing down in here, it's accumulating sediment and it's irrigating the banks of the stream there. And so we're getting vegetation growing in.
What's so tiny about it?
1 year. This one was 1 year. Maybe 2 years. I forget when I take the pictures, but I think it's 1 year.
Did you see it in them?
Yes. So this is a typical day on the job, pondering the rocks.
Sure.
Trying to move the water over there.
So all materials are on site?
No, in this particular one, so at Butler Cawthorn, we had to import rock. So there's no rock at Butler Cawthorn because it's the West Mesa. It's just the sandy escarpment. At Placitas, we have an abundance of rock all over. And so all we got to do is walk a couple of feet. So we also so there comes a point where the arroyo is too big to do something by hand, and we need to bring in the heavy equipment. And so here's a good example where we're using a skid steer and an excavator to move dirt and bring in the rock material to really clog these, to fill in the incised channels. And so here's a little animation. It's not an animation, but this is a gully plug. And on the left side, you have the before scenario. And on the right side is what it looked like after we built it. And the problem here is that this is an incised arroyo, which is basically acting like a drain on the landscape, if you will. Okay. Water flows into that incised arroyo and just starts leaving the watershed as quickly as possible. And as a result, the upland landscape around it is drying out. Okay. This was probably, look how straight that is. We're guessing that's an anthropogenic feature. It could be an old tire rut, something like that. And once you kind of learn how to see these on the landscape and you read the landscape, you start seeing them everywhere. So there's the bad flows of water. All that area is being dried out and upstream. So what we do is we borrow a little bit of dirt from over here and we fill in the arroyo there and plug it. And that causes water to escape out onto the landform, thereby irrigating what was once drying out. That's the idea. Oops, I thought I had the green picture. I have another picture of the same site where it's all nice and green after rain. I thought it was right there afterwards. But that's the principle behind doing the earthwork stuff that we do. It's, a very simple, this is kind of a real simplified version of it. But we also have to, before we do this, we have to make sure that the elevations are going to work, that the water is going to stay on the landscape out here and not just turn around and return to the erosional feature. Because if it's not set up correctly where the water can flow out onto the landscape, what we end up with is a high and dry feature just sitting there perched with everything eroded around it. And then we've created another problem. And you see that a lot. You see that a lot with one rock dams and stuff where they just weren't built up beefy enough to be protected. You see that a lot with concrete structures coming off of the freeway. Like every concrete flume off of an overpass on I-10 here in Las Cruces has a couple of truckloads of riprap put in and on the sides where all of that water just rolled out of that flume and it chewed away the soil that was next to it. You'll see it. You may not have seen it yet, but you'll see it now that I mentioned it. You'll be sitting there at the light going, oh yeah, look at that. The other thing that we're doing is a strategy that we affectionately call KISS, keyline plowing, imprinting, and seeding. And this is where we change the runoff coefficient of the land by slicing open the land with a chisel plow or a keyline plow and turning the surface of the land into a waffle. And this is cool because in one pass with the tractor, we can dramatically change the way we can do this treatment in one pass with the tractor, so it's very efficient, it's very quick, and we can get through a lot of area. The keyline plow is the first part of this puzzle here, and that's the plow shank, and this is not just your typical chisel plow that you might find on your grandpa's farm. This plow shank was designed to be narrow and thin, and it doesn't turn the soil over. It just opens the soil up. It's basically like taking a knife through a layer cake. We can get about 18 inches deep. That's not 81. It's actually 18. I'll flip around in the picture. We can get 18 to 24 inches deep depending on the soil type and how fast we're going and all these other things. These are just really cool pictures of neat equipment, so kind of geeking out. Also, these photos were taken by our friend Esha Kyokyo from Santa Fe. She has a really cool website. And tune in. The November issue of National Geographic is going to feature some pictures from this site.
Oh.
Yeah, pretty cool.
What is her name again?
Esha Kyokyo.
Oh, what was the first name spelled?
Esha, E-S-H-A.
Oh, okay.
There, look. Can you see her name there? You can't see it. There it is. Can you see her name there? CHIOCCHIO. And her website is eshaphoto.com.
Eight.
Yeah. She came out.
Can you go back to the last photo? There. Okay. The lowest end of the shank is rather bulbous, if you will. So there's a narrow shank that goes around, and at the bottom of it, it gets fat. So what happens when you drive along, it pops the soil. In order to drag that fat end horizontally, it pushes up the soil, and so it breaks up 100 years of compaction in one pass without tilling the soil and scrambling the layers.
This is keyline principle stuff that I'm not going to talk about. That's what keylining might look like on the landscape alone. But then, that's what Hector looks like when he's keylining on the landscape alone. This is my imprinter. The other one was Gordon's. So the imprinter is the next piece of this thing, of this system. And what the imprinter does is basically take that expanded soil, that sliced and expanded soil, and rolls it into a waffle shape. Rolls a waffle shape into it. And those are the cleats of the imprinter. And each imprint is about a square foot and can hold about a gallon of water. And so if a quarter inch of rain kind of falls gently over the afternoon, every single drop of that water is going into the soil instead of running off the surface. First off, because of the imprint is holding it there, and then secondly, the keyline plow has opened up an 18-inch deep channel below that imprint. So that water is able to get really deep. And then the third component of it is the seeding. This is the seed mix that we used for the DOT project. Every site has its own specific seed mix depending on the soil types and elevation and where you're at. And Gordon's seeder is a little bit different than mine, but there's the seed. I'm pointing to the seed here in the imprints. We're very, very proud of our machines. Gordon and I built our own machine we're really excited about them. And I think this is gonna show us what Van was talking about. So you can see the soil sort of taking a breath right there, if you will. It's like the soil is going, it's inhaling, it's getting air brought into it, it's getting opened up, but it's not getting turned. And that's important because yesterday we talked about the fungal colonies, the mycorrhizae and stuff that could live in the soil. And we don't want to disturb those. We don't want to turn those over and expose them. And then you see the imprinting that comes over. And so this is a neat picture that you can see on the left side that was non-keylined and just imprinted. And on the right side was imprinted with the keyline. And you can see the difference that it makes in the and the ability to texturize the soil. So the best way I like to describe this is when you go to the pancake house and you order, and you and your partner sit there, and one of you orders pancakes, and they bring out the pancakes, and the other one of you orders waffles. And the first thing you do is when you get your pancakes and your waffles, and the person eating the waffles takes their knife and slices their waffles in half. And the other person just dives right in, the person with the pancakes dives right over to the syrup. And they open up that syrup bottle and they start pouring syrup on their pancakes. What happens to that syrup when you pour it on that short stack of pancakes?
Runs on.
It just goes whoop. But the dude with the big stack of waffles that's actually cut it open, when he pours that syrup on there, where does that syrup go? Into the waffles. It stays on the top of that first waffle and it then just kind of soaks in. So, pancake, waffle.
That was good.
Yeah.
A little yummy comparison there.
Yeah, it's true.
So you can definitely see the difference between the untreated and the oh no. Now I'm stuck. I'm stuck in YouTube.
Maybe escape in.
No, yeah, there's that. There it is. Okay. This is an aerial view of what kissing the land looks like. What did we do there?
I poison.
It's like fell asleep at the wheel. Whoa, shoot. No, we were avoiding a gopher hole. You know, so it's really important to, you know, even though the computer model can show us 1 foot contours on the landscape and everything, we still got to be paying attention because there's critters that live out there, and we don't want to run us 5 knives through somebody's home, you know. So this is that's a 134 acre rectangle of land that's getting squiggled. It looks like the yarn art that we used to do in elementary school. But check out all those gopher holes. See all the little wobbles where we missed critters? And then that's at the end of it there. I think that took like 4 days to do the work on.
Oh.
Anyway, really cool pictures. I like this picture because this picture shows earthwork, excavator and loader earthwork that Van did to move the water to get it out of channels. So there's at the top end of the screen there, you can see what we call some worm ditches, some earthwork that basically intercepts water that's flowing in a small incised channel and then distributes that water across the landscape. And you can kind of see where the grasses are growing outside of the realm of that, the influence of last year's grasses there. And then the KISS work to just try to change the runoff coefficient anyway so that it doesn't even get into those rills. Oh my gosh, I could just, between the rocks and the kissing, I just really get excited here. This is the milepost 10 thing, the slide that I opened this presentation with the water in it. That's a sunrise photo of large basins on 50-foot centers with the imprinting over them. And on this one, we trucked in 16 semi-loads of wood mulch. Sadly, it came all the way from Colorado because there's no wood mulch available in Diana County.
We make our own mulch.
You guys actually no. I stand corrected. There's no wood mulch available at that quantity in Hidalgo County. In Las Cruces, there actually is.
Well, probably not that quantity. That's a lot.
It's not wood mulch, but you guys do have your own mulch stuff. And actually, El Paso has it as well. It's pretty cool. Another picture, another drone shot of that, and that's a 33-acre site done with the 50-foot basins and then the imprinting, and that was after it was completed. There wasn't a blade of grass in there, and passed by there the other day, and things are starting to germinate, you know. So this is what we're all hoping for, right? Is something growing at the inside. Oh my God, these awful picture graphs and slides. All these show is that grass is growing and dust emissions are being reduced. So that's important stuff for the Lordsburg Playa job. We're hoping that with these same kind of strategies for Butler-Cawthorn, we're going to see a reduction in sediment transport and erosion and stuff like that.
Hey, Mike, who funded this job?
The Lordsburg Playa job was funded by the New Mexico Department of Transportation.
You trained.
So here's a cool picture that we're doing this kind of work also on the Butler-Cawthorn and the Placitas job, where John Gwynn has a kick-ass LiDAR drone sitting on his desk. And actually, I guess it's sitting on Tambry's desk. And they go out and they've got the highest resolution LiDAR photo you can get according to USGS standards for all of Doña Ana County. It's really cool. And he goes out and updates it pretty regularly. And if he needs to fly a spot specifically, he'll set up a mission to go do that. So we're doing that with the Butler-Cawthorn job and the Rincon Arroyo job. And so what this map shows is a network of incised arroyos, incised channels. This one's again at the Lordsburg Playa. The green, so we flew LiDAR on it and we compared it to LiDAR that was collected by the USGS in 2018. And so we flew this LiDAR in 2023. And the darker the green area indicates the more sediment accumulation within that incised arroyo. The red stuff represents stuff that was cut. And so down here we have an excavation that was cut and used to plug arroyos and stuff down here, resulting in a whole bunch of sediment accumulation within this channel. And so on this one, I think this is about, I think that's about a quarter section. Maybe it's a little bit bigger than a quarter section. Would you say that, Ken? I don't know. Is that 40 acres or more? That's North Breach? It's less than 40 acres because look, that's the middle. This is the south portal and north portal of North Breach. So I think this is about a quarter section. And we've got something like 40 dump trucks of accumulated sediment within these little areas from the work that we get. So LiDAR is proving that these strategies are working. That's the point there. Imprinted land. That's a very selective photograph of a fence line effect. Very choice photo. And you'll see that picture in National Geographic next month.
Oh, that's pretty. That is.
I think that's the end of this presentation. If anybody has any questions, I'll take questions.
Speaking about.
Oh, there's the results. Look at that. Huh. That picture right there. Sorry.
That's okay.
That's an aerial photograph. That is the day of treatment, and that's a year after treatment.
Wow. That is impressive.
So, thank you. It's very cool. Don't get too excited.
Yeah. It's New Mexico.
This was a wet year.
Anything green is exciting in New Mexico.
It rained. It didn't rain.
It was a fairly decent wet year, and it was in response to the disturbance because this is a system in stasis. Right here, you're seeing a system that is in stasis. Nothing is changing. We've come in and we've caused a dynamic change. The landscape is responding. The next year, it's like, okay, but what we have now on the soil surface is mulch.
Right. You have
We have-
vegetative roots.
We have organic matter and we have mulch helping to hold the soil in place. And the seeds are still there because all of that was annuals that were actually in the existing soil seed bank. This is a different one of those plug-in pond features that I showed the animation of how we built it. Again, you can see we're holding water in the landscape. A one rock dam slows down. You know, we've got sediment accumulating behind the one rock dams, and it's slowing down the head cutting. The rocks are preventing further head cutting and incision. And poppies growing in key-lined areas, annual grasses, and Calstromia parviflora. And and then I talk about us, but you guys already know us. There's Van, there's Gordon, he's got the big tractor. There's me, I built the fence. And there's Matthew. You see, I told you Matthew's a big dude. And so, yeah, now I'll take your questions. You had a question.
So, like, thinking about, like, the mycorrhizal web, do you ever inoculate?
The mycorrhizal web, do we ever inoculate? Yes, we've started inoculating a little bit. I think there's mixed results. I've personally done hydroseeding and imprinting where we've done microbial or mycorrhizal inoculants on one half and no mycorrhizal inoculants on another half and seen zero results. And so for the cost, I'm not sure that it's worth it. But
Yes, I've seen it more used specifically for trees, like when you plant those seedlings and so like what you said, like I haven't seen it really work for imprinting. And then do you ever hydro mulch or is it a cost thing again?
the question was, do we ever do hydroseeding? It's my opinion, based on personal experience, that hydroseeding is not a very effective method on these desert soils in areas with less than 10 inches of rain a year. So I've done some hydroseeding in the past, and I haven't done that in a long, long time. Where we have used a hydroseeder machine is to spread mulch.
Right, like the hydro mulching.
So another site on the Lordsburg Playa where we had to come in, we used the tackifier. We used the hydroseeder to spread tackifier to hold everything down a little bit temporarily. We also did that at Chandler Tank. In fact, that's where I met Jake Kidd. Was when he worked for this city. We did Chandler Tank up the hill from the Sand Hill Arroyo. We went in and did this imprinting and seeding work on that site. I should show pictures of that in my presentation. The funny thing about that site is I never went back. And Jake one day said, you ought to go back. It looks pretty good. But I've been told that they mowed it all down and bulldozed it again. So I don't.
It's going to be a part.
Well, there you go.
They're going to make it into a farm. I mean, they should have in the first place. That's what it was being used for. You're not necessarily a play park that people are walking.
Nature park, yeah.
Isn't that correct, Peter?
Yeah, parts of it are, but yeah, our streets, true. They're still they're gunzo and they're bulldozers. They got a big new bulldozer, so that's kind of
They're testing it out.
They're using it on everything. So it's frustrating for me because it disrupts. It takes for 3 years to, at least 3 years to get any kind of vegetation back again after they go through it like that. But that's the way they're working, and it's hard to convince the engineers that to do it a different way. So
Yeah.
it's kind of the boat I'm in right now.
It's one of the big tricks about this job, about this career, is managing expectations. Everything moves a little bit slower in the desert. And on top of that, it's the Chihuahuan Desert. So everything's a little bit smaller, a little bit slower. It's really cold. It's really hot. There's not enough water. There's too much water. A lot of what we do, I think, is about creating a space somewhere on the fringes of something that we do where something will grow. And And then that just comes with time.
You can see too, like the areas that NMDOT have done around Las Cruces, the little bowls around the interchanges and stuff. They've done those years and years ago, and basically have never maintained those, and they've never had to. And it's like a perfect example of the kind of seed mixes, native seed mixes you use, compared to going in there and bulldozing an area every couple of years, where you don't really have to. You might see a few rills in here and there, but overall that vegetation, that small native vegetation, has got to be way more resilient than going in with a bulldozer every year, every couple of years. So yeah, all you got to do is look at those NMDOT sites around the city and see that they've been pretty much left them that way, and they're still seem to pretty spotty, you know.
Yeah.
We need to do more of that. I mean, what you're doing with NMDOT is great, because they've accepted your processes, and then you exchange ideas with the seed mixes and find out what's best and how to make them stick and germinate. So, I mean, that's what everything needs to be policy in our region, is that methodology. So, in order to get those results, because a lot of it is a lot of people are still in their mindset. A lot of developers, seeds don't take. It doesn't work. So they just don't try. So
It doesn't work within the time frame of a SWIP.
yeah, and that's a blanket
Yes.
regulation by the EPA, the construction stormwater permit. They do give arid regions a little longer to establish, but they don't know the difference between our area and, say, Midwest. It's a complete different practice that you have to apply here, and we haven't adopted it region-wide yet.
Yeah.
But the other thing is like the SWIPs, NMED in the 401 certification, we already have requirements for our SWIPs that are more stringent. So it's also the time that I hadn't thought about, like, we can ask for additional things. Like the problem with developers is the SWIPs, while it requires long-term stabilization, it's not specified, hey, include some seeding and it's a met. So it's actually, if you can increase that in MS4 comments, that would be.
Yeah, for sure. I've tried to, suggest having this procedure in our ordinance. Say, hey, if you're gonna seed, you have to use this mix. This is what works best. Like, we're not quite there yet with it.
Yeah. Well, things are developing. We're running a half an hour ahead of schedule. And so the blue polygons being state land, and the yellow polygons being BLM, and the white being private. This red boundary is the sub-watershed boundary for the Cawthorn Dam. And so this is the contributing area to this point right here. And in this particular case, we had authorization to work on state lands. I think we didn't have authorization to work on BLM lands just yet. The yellow polygons, these big yellow blobs, are archaeological sites that were identified during the NEPA process. And so for the sake of our field crews that are using this GIS data on their phones out in the field, we put these big, giant, solid yellow blobs on the screen so that they says, stay out. No digging here. So these are archaeological exclusion sites, and there's some big ones and there's some little ones. And then as we get into it, so then all the green stuff, I was telling you that Connie's computer modeling is looking at things on a watershed scale and stuff. And so her models are predicting where we should put one rock dams in our features. And so that's her analysis on this one resulted in all of these green dots being placed. And then we got on the ground and we started working, and we kind of just started at the top of the watershed, and every blue triangle represents the structure we built somewhere within the green areas that she had defined for us. And so I'm going to switch over to this map, which shows some different layers. The red dots are features that we built, and then the little, we use this for photo monitoring. And so we try to take a picture of every structure we build. And so let's go see what one looks like. I'm just going to pick one. And so there's a structure that was built.
Oh.
It accumulated sediment.
You can, and oh yeah, you know what? And actually, this is our photo monitoring layer. So this is after construction. The feature stayed in place. There's a drop off here, and this is all new sediment that accumulated behind that structure. So we're accumulating sediment and stopping erosion. Like Van said, we're reversing the process of what's happening here. You want to see another one?
Yes.
I love the way you're doing that.
Yeah, so we can go right to our map and kick on. Every now and then we get a surprise though.
Like, what does that mean?
Well, like it is like, oh, I wasn't expecting that picture.
Oops.
Here's a couple of features. This is cool too because we can kind of just do a desktop scan review of like, all right, maybe we need to, like I can send out a crew member that doesn't necessarily know exactly what to do, or I can send out like a junior level person to do the photo monitoring, and we can kind of come back and do a desktop review of it and have a good idea of things maybe that need to go back and be fixed. This one we already looked at. But I haven't got buried. Or either buried or totally washed away. Who knows? So that's
Mike, on your map, does each point have the series of post construction and then a year out or whatever photos, or
yeah,
is
we're getting to that point.
okay?
Yeah, we're getting to that point. Things tend to be created in a separate layer, so we've got to add those layers in and
Gotcha.
look at the metadata and for what we're doing here. So then what we do is we pick a couple of good ones and we put them together in a PDF report. That's what we deliver. But I like that picture that shows that the structure is accumulating sediment. And look, what's behind it?
Grass.
Grass. What's the grass going to do?
Stabilize.
It's going to help stabilize. It's putting roots into the soil, which allows water to get deeper into the soil. It slows water down as the water's flowing across the soil. So that's what